Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday service of Now Creations. Just a joy to be with you here today. And may I remind you that the beauty and the power of your soul is the God Spirit within you. It's all that any of us need. May we so live today. A couple of exciting things. I hope that you checked out the newspaper ad this morning. It would have been delivered by your email. I think you'll find it to be extremely interesting concerning the genes within our physiology. And then tonight, we're quite excited. We're very excited to indicate that for our topic of conversation, we're going to use the book, What is Light Body by Tashira Tachiren. It'll take us to another level. I invite you to join us. It'll be from 6 to 7:30 this evening. Let's begin. My dear friends, as we continue our growth in spiritual awareness, this spiritual growth illumines so many other aspects of our lives, which previously were not either understood or perhaps even considered. One such question among many is, why are not more people growing spiritually? Why are not more people excited about the beauty and power of spiritual living as we are? These are good questions to ask ourselves. But what is more important is to have better answers that will give us a clearer understanding of why things are the way they are, but also provide a firm basis for continued spiritual growth for ourselves, as well as modeling a spiritual behavior for others. Thus, the topic of today's teaching is good questions, better answers. I will begin, first of all, with a question of why people are seemingly not so interested in their spiritual development, and then address the second question of why we are so interested in our spiritual development. The answer to the first question will give us a better understanding, while the answer to the second question will give us the inspiration to continue our spiritual growth. To the first question, why aren't more people seemingly interested in their spiritual growth? There is what I consider to be a simple answer to the question, and then a more complex one. First, the simple answer. The simple answer, I believe, is one that is clearly presented in A Course in Mastering Alchemy. It is at the heart of the matter. It's still not accepted by many, even many on a spiritual path. The simple answer is that we ourselves dimmed our light to play the game of separation. We dimmed our own lights to play the game of separation. I think that this is the truest answer. We dimmed our own light to experience all of the lower energies of fear, worry, and anxiety. You might ask yourself, well, why would we ever do such a thing? The answer is because we could. We are free beings who are in charge of our own light. So we diminished our light in order to have the experience of separation, of what it feels like to be temporarily separated from our God light, and thus to have the experience of realignment, of waking up. Neil Donald Walsh presented it very nicely when he said, we entered that which we are not so that we could experience what we truly are. We entered into what we are not, separation from God temporarily, so that we could be more fully who we are from an experiential condition, namely our oneness with the God Spirit. Waking up to who we are is quite an experience. We've all had that. We have awakened to who we are. And knowing who you are is even a greater experience after you have played the game of separation. And any of us who have awakened know this experience quite well. We especially see the contrast between who we thought we were in the lower energies of separation. Can't believe at times all of the crazy things we did. And now that experience of separation has given us a good contrast to our realignment. We have re-experienced our oneness with the divine. We have had the experience of separation, and in doing so, we weren't quite aware of it at the time, but now we are. And indeed, what a contrast it is now that we have moved from that separation into realignment. Quite an experience. It was just an experience that many people are still going through. In 1742, the poet Thomas Gray gave us a good description of this experience when he said, "Ignorance is bliss." Ignorance is bliss. And I would add the word, even when it isn't. For all of us found out that the ignorance of separation has often been a very frightening experience, even when we didn't even know that. And it still is for many people. So to me, this is the simplest answer to the question, why are so many people not growing spiritually? They are still in the experience of separation. Now the more complex answer. This good question of why people are still not in the joy of spirituality will have two parts to it, as well as a descriptive word. First, the question. This is a question asked by many, and it clearly shows the grip that the world has on people until eventually it does not. So here's the question. It's really a deeper question. Why should I look for something else in life, like a spiritual path, when my path is doing pretty well? Why should I look for something else when I think I'm doing okay? I have a good relationship. Things are good with my family, got a good job, enough money, pretty satisfied with what's going on in my life. Granted, there might be a day or two that has a downturn, but for the most part, my life is good. So why should I change? I'm happy where I am. It's about this grip the world has on us. Now, the other side of the coin, the second part of the question, concerns those who are not doing so well. They don't seem to have enough money. Their relationships are not going well. They're struggling in life, perhaps with addictions, and just not able at times to make their ends meet. This second group also is not looking for a spiritual solution. They want to raise their standard of living up to the first group. They want more of the pleasures of life. They don't want life to be quite so difficult anymore. And that takes money, and that takes worldly success. Again, not a conducive atmosphere for the spiritual path. We see many of these, especially experience this in the auto picket lines. There is a word attached to both those that have and those who have not. That word is oblivion. Both for those who have and those who have not. The word oblivion. They are oblivious to the path of spiritual growth. The energy spent either in maintaining the status quo for those who are doing well and improving the status for those who are not doing quite so well, they are oblivious to. In either case, they are oblivious to the path of spiritual growth, for their ignorance is still blissful because they don't understand all of the things that are involved in their difficulty. There just isn't a whole lot that they feel that they can do. So might I suggest to you that there isn't a whole lot that we can do oftentimes with such people. So why should either group elevate to a higher spiritual state? That's really a good question. Why should either group elevate to a higher spiritual state? Especially for those of us who really enjoy being on the spiritual path. So may I suggest 3 answers, 3 steps to the question. First, the Hindu answer still seems to me to be the best answer. It gives a good description of the oblivion of the worldly self. The Hindus call it the path of desire. This is such an important concept to understand. For such lives, both for the wealthy and those who are not quite so wealthy, are pretty well caught up in the pleasures of the world and continually look for wealth, fame, and power. And the Hindus teach us that there's not much you can do to change such people because of the second understanding. Listen closely. The second understanding was introduced very nicely in the book Death Without Fear by Tony Stubbs. He stated very clearly that in the earth life, there are baby souls, young souls, mature souls, and old souls. Those who are presently oblivious, to the spiritual path are the baby and young souls who are still caught up in worldly pleasures, which all of us who are on the spiritual path know too well, because we too have played that game of separation. This is what we must understand, that there are many people presently oblivious to the spiritual path. They are still experiencing separation. These souls, too, will one day wake up, but not necessarily on our timeline. As A Course in Miracles teaches, every soul in earthly sojourn, is required to wake up. That the timeline of that awakening is theirs, not ours. So we're now ready with the third step. Again, listen carefully, see if this fits. The third step really involves that third good question: why bother with spiritual growth? Just a good question for all of us. Why bother with spiritual growth? Better yet, why have we bothered with our spiritual development when others seem to be, well, just as content without it? That's a good question. And I think here's a better answer. The first answer is the most important one. This is the first answer. We have completed the game of separation. We have completed the dimming of our lights, and we are now in alignment with our creative energy. We have ended the game of separation, and we are now moving on. We have had the experience of separation, and we have awakened. Quite an experience. We must allow others who are still oblivious to the spiritual understanding to be on their path, understanding that they too will have the glorious experience of awakening as we have. In the meantime, you and I will continue to support each other, as well as giving the best example we can to others living in the Spirit. These joys will then comprise answers 2 through 6. 2 through 6. So now that we have awakened from the experience of separation, we can model the following answers to each other. We're going to help each other. We still have a ways to go, but also to all others, to end the game of separation in their lives. So let's recall. The first answer to the question, why bother spiritually, is we have ended the game of separation. Here are answers 2 through 6 to why we continue to bother. The second answer, you now have the greatest foundation of life that anyone could have. You have the conscious presence of the God Spirit within you, so that when anything else will fail in life, and things will fail in life, you will not fail. You will not fail. You will not fail, because the treasures in life are not viewed as the changing temporary things of the world, but rather the treasure in life is the changeless, conscious God presence within you. You are no longer fooled by the world's promises. You are no longer oblivious to the spiritual life. You no longer think that spiritual ignorance is bliss. You have built your life on the firm foundation of the rock that Jesus talked about, rather than the shifting tides, shifting sands of earthly living. Well, we are not strangers to challenges, because we have that God Spirit at the very center of our lives, because we have ended separation and now have the God Spirit at the center of our lives. We can assist others by modeling a much better way. And they too will follow when they are ready to do so. The third answer. The third answer is one that probably has surprised all of us. It's this. You probably never thought in your wildest imagination that your spirituality would give you the joy that it has. You never thought that your spirituality would raise the quality of your everyday living to the elevated state you are now experiencing. Isn't it wonderful? Isn't it wonderful to be joyful in your everydayness, because you don't rely on the things of the world to give you joy, but rather you bring that conscious, God-centered joy into your daily life. You bring the energy into your everyday life circumstances so that now there is a purpose in your everyday living, which quite frankly is the fourth answer. The fourth answer to why should I live a spiritual life is that you have found the antidote to self-centeredness. You have found the antidote to selfish living that many still are bound to, even though perhaps they say they're not, concerning the world. You now realize that you have a purpose in life that far exceeds just me and mine. You clearly realize that your purpose in life is to usher in the kingdom of God. One of our members just recently gave me a call the other day and said, I am so happy. I am so happy because I am ushering in the kingdom of God. Wow. Did you ever think that you would say that your purpose in life is to bring heaven to earth and to mean it and to live it? Did you ever think you'd say, what I am doing is bringing heaven to earth, right where I am. I mean this, and I am living it. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. The fifth answer of why we are living a spiritual life. We have come to understand that the only thing you take with you when you leave the physical plane is the state of consciousness that you are in. And we desire to be in the consciousness of God when we leave. But there's more. Not only will we be in the consciousness of God when we pass, but we are now living in the consciousness of the God Spirit. We are beginning to live there, here. We're living tomorrow, today. The veil of time has been reduced to the moment of now. The veil of time has been reduced to the moment of now. The eternal presence is our presence, here and now. Quite a lesson that we can share with those who are still in separation. And now for the sixth and final reason. The sixth answer, I think, continues to amaze us. Every time we think that life can't get any better, we think that this is it. Every time we think that, we quickly find out that it is simply the next stepping stone to our development. This awareness is very important to each one of us, because now you begin to see yourself as an eternal spirit rather than an aging body. Yes, I'm going to repeat that. You're beginning to see yourself as an eternal spirit, not as an aging body. We continue to take a better look at ourselves and the possibilities that our spiritual living is opening for us as we move forward. And there is much, much more to come. So in conclusion, I have answered the very good question, why are some people just not overly interested in their spiritual development? Because, well, they're still waking up. They're still oblivious to what will await them. But you awakened. And as you understand that you have traveled beyond the path of oblivion, you now certainly will not judge others, but you will provide answers not only to yourself and to them that indicate a better path that awaits them. Oh yes, we're going to travel this path together. Oh yes, with much more to come. Let me now take you into meditation, and what a joy it is to do so. Let's begin as we normally do by just taking a breath or two, just breathing in and breathing out. We've all been there. We've all been there. We've all lived in the energy of separation, and we're oblivious to it. We've all have looked for a better way, as Helen Schuckman and William Thetford did, inscribing a Course in Miracles. It's got to be something better. In our despair, sometimes we just didn't know what to do. We were just so confused. Oh, we went through the motions, we played the game, and of course there were days that were quite happy, were quite nice, but we knew that something was just missing. We played the game of separation to the hilt. You remember those fearful days. Not only unsure of others, but unsure of yourself. Oh, yes, you said you believed in God, but so my God was in Timbuktu, some distant heaven. And then on your timeline, one in which all of us are sharing, in our timelines, something occurred, something changed. We began the spiritual quest. First, there were concepts and ideas in our mind, new age, a lot of people say, certainly new thoughts, better thoughts. But eventually, those thoughts, with your work, your study, your spiritual practices, those thoughts became an experience. You began to experience the God presence that you never left. Words like, you're an idea in the mind of God that has not left its source. You began to experience not just in your mind. Oh, you could discuss the concepts of oneness and love, but you began to experience that in your heart. There was just something within you that said, yes, I have not left my source. And at that moment, your life changed. You became bigger, more self-assured, happier, nicer, kinder, smarter, friendlier. You awakened. You woke up, not boastfully or arrogantly, but rather the little you was transformed into understanding that you were of the God Spirit. And it just brought a smile to your face and one in your heart. And you just kind of knew that, well, you were it. You were it. But even that it was only the beginning. It was only the beginning, but it was quite a beginning. A certainty has now entered your life. A certainty that was never there before. A certainty. Of course, you have a body and you have a brain and you live in the material world. Of course you do. But that did not fool you anymore because you also knew that you had a soul, that you were a spiritual being, and that you were connected to your source. And because of that, you began to live as a modern day mystic, bringing heaven to earth, ushering in the kingdom, right in your life, in your home, in your life circumstances. Yes, indeed. It's quite an experience to have been in separation and now fully awakened, having that experience tucked under our belt and ready to move forward as conscious creators. Quite an experience. For you have transformed. You have transformed the agony of defeat in the game of separation into the thrill of victory, of living in the awareness. You won the game. And will now expand. Let me now invite you to return back to your breath. Nice, easy breathing. Quite an accomplishment. Quite an accomplishment. And one that will only expand. Let me invite you to gently breathe your eyes open. I mean, you got to have that smile on your face. That wonderful presence within you. Just brings it forth. Happy. Happy to be happy as you. For I am an eternal being of light and love. Thus, only good can come to me, and only good can come from me. And we are eternal beings of light and love. Thus, only good can come to us, and only good can come from us. Namaste.